Greetings from the Nutrify C-Suite Summit here in Mumbai. My name is Lynda Doyle. I'm President and CEO of Avant Nutrition, a strategic consultancy, and I am one of the founding members and secretary of WIN, Women In Nutraceuticals. WIN is a global not-for-profit established by industry leaders, both women and men, to help empower women to unlock their personal and professional potential. Our three key pillars include increasing the number of women on boards and C-suite, expanding investment for women-led businesses, as well as increasing the number of women in research and the number of women in cohorts for research itself. WIN recognizes that while we have overarching global goals, there are specific regional needs that do exist, and we'd like to focus on India today. I'm really excited to be here with fellow co-founders of WIN, Heather Granato, VP of Sustainability and Partnerships with Informa Europe and current WIN president, and Gillian Fish. Jill is the president and CEO of the 6 a.m. agency and the founding chair of marketing. And I'm also here with Anand Swaroop, the CEO of Cepham and one of our founding gold sponsors for WIN, and with Rajat Shah, co-founder and executive director for Nutriventia Healthcare, as well as our new regional liaison for India. And we're really excited about having Rajat here with us as well. So maybe what we could do is start with some of the data. And Heather, if you could share with us, WIN had conducted a survey or commissioned a survey earlier this year in the nutraceutical industry, and we had some really interesting results. Maybe you could share with us some of those top line results with us.
Of course, Lynda, it's a pleasure. And certainly from the time that you and I talked about the need for women in nutraceuticals and trying to find out leadership in the nutraceutical industry, there's a perception, and the perception is there seems to be a lot more men than women in this industry. Absolutely. In the leadership positions. But it's one thing to feel it, it's another to have data. And that was one of our key priorities in our first year. So we were very fortunate that Informa was willing to fund a study, so a global study, 355 respondents from all over the world who actually gave us insights into their own leadership. What is the profile? So that we understand where we are. And what we found was we're right on track with most other industries, whether it's the pharma industry, the food industry, CPG. You're looking at about 37% of women in senior leadership positions. You've got about 28% of women in C-suite positions and 23% on boards. These are very similar to the numbers that we see in other industries. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm saying that I think there's opportunity for growth. And ultimately, we're looking at the need for gender parity. Gender equity is the way that we get there, and ultimately having men and women working together to change those numbers, to increase the representation in leadership is going to be so powerful. And that's the global side of it. I also know that we saw differences in other areas, and we kind of consolidated some information from the APAC region, so that what we saw was about 46% was actually the representation of women in senior levels, and about 34% at the C-suite. So rest of the world, APAC region, India, had greater representation within the leadership levels. So that for me really spoke to the opportunity that we have and the importance of meeting countries and industries where they are. Really important to understand the cultural sensitivities and work with our partners who are actually here in the area.
Absolutely. And actually that'll bring me over to Anand for a moment. Anand, you became a partner with WIN very early on in the process. And I believe you have some really interesting stories to share, and it'd be really nice to know what drove you to join WIN and to support WIN and the goals of WIN, and what is it that brought your journey, or what is it about your journey that to help support women that you've been doing in your career?
So I found, I'm basically a scientist who turned to entrepreneur. So mostly I'm looking for data on everything which we should do. And what I found early on when I was looking at my supply chain, one part of it is definitely we want to see more women in C-suites. We want to see more women in a position where we have more diversity of thought. But when I go down to my supply chain, I look at people who are doing agri-processing, people who are working in the factories. And ideally, it should be a 50-50 ratio. You're looking at that. And India and Asia and Africa, where we are based out of, societies are based on agriculture. And the families are involved in agriculture, small kind of farmers and stakeholders who are being part of this entire chain. So what I found that all the farms where women are working, they've been taken care of. They are either they're owning it or they're in majority. Their outputs are better than the places where they're in less in numbers. And this is a pure data. What we did, that we ran a kind of anonymized data service, and it just opened my eyes. Like, this is actually making a business sense, because as a businessman, you don't want to be really, going too much after social causes. I mean, there are things which are required to do, but then if it's making a business sense, then it's basically, you have both words combined together. That's what drove me. I was looking for somebody to start something like this, and you talked, and I said, this is the need hour. Let's just jump on all in right away. So it's a great so far. I'm also learning a lot, which I think men should do. They listen. Sometimes we don't listen. We just try to talk, and I'm telling you, every meeting we go with Ben, and the small things which I kind of never knew, and I'm learning, and trying to be basically, take this learning home.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. And you talked a little bit about the data that you're collecting and the insights you're building. I think that's very exciting, and to help support the cause and the story for the future, and to see how that changes. Just like with the WIN survey, it's being used as a baseline for developing KPIs and to understand how can we improve and are we actually being successful and impacting change. Anand, in the beginning, you had also shared a story about the farms, if you don't mind sharing with us. I think it's a very impactful.
It's impactful. There's some things which you observe, during your course of work, which really change the way you look at things. And I was out in a farm somewhere in northern India, and we buy some seeds from this farm. They pick up the seeds from the ground, and then they start cleaning them. And I saw, a floor full of men and women cleaning the seeds, and there was one woman on the corner, last in that row, and then she was just taking her own time, cleaning everything. After the cleaning was done, then she was picking up every dirt and stone from those seeds and throwing them out, while the other workers were just simply doing it, jumping in a big jute bag and done. And that really, caught my eye, and I walked inside with the supervisor. I asked him that, I hope we are paying her the best, because that's the thing. And he said, "You out of your mind? We pay her the least, and I'm thinking of actually firing her." I said, I don't get it. Why? Oh, she's a slow worker. It's very hard to explain these things to somebody who doesn't know the entire supply chain, and I totally understand his ignorance on that. So I went to this woman and asked her that, why are you cleaning it that better when we don't really, pay you more? And what she told me would really change my entire perspective. She said, somebody's going to eat this. And that was such a profound statement on its own, that somebody in the process, somebody who's in supply chain, looking at things very differently, a complete different paradigm. And I went back and I thought of doing something where we can change things without actually having to say or forcing people in the supply chain to change things. And that's where my idea of database gender equity came into my mind, that we should look at the data we have for the last 20 years and then start analyzing the data of things we gather from all the farms. And if there is something out there, and before we didn't have the tools. Now we have AI, we have ChatGPT, we have cheaper things available to us, and then for the fun sake of it, we ran sample data, and it was true. Anywhere there are more women in the post-processing chain, you are buying raw material which you have to clean less, spend less solvents, less energy, more sustainable, and actually you're saving money.
Fantastic. And actually, to build on that, I think that this is now actual data that we can use, and from the industry and from what you've observed. And Heather, I believe you have data that you can share in terms of what is it that women bring to the table, and why is it so important to have gender diversity in businesses?
I think it's mission critical, and to your point, I've actually been in touch with Solidaridad as well, and they found very much the same thing, that when you have women involved in the farming, you're getting better produce, you're getting better products because they're taking that time. I think they also bring a different way of thinking, and that's the importance of actually building a team that has diversity. And it's not either or, it's how many points of view. Can we have gender representation? Can we have ethnic, diverse representation? And what they found in McKinsey studies is actually companies that have a more inclusive culture. You're looking at 2 times more likely to reach their financial targets. They're 6 times more likely to be adaptive and innovative. And the big thing is they're 8 times more likely to actually have better business results than their competitors. So it makes business sense to think about it. And one thing that I've also found really interesting from the research is when you're looking at how do we help women leaders succeed, one thing that is really important is the diversity of the workforce itself.
Right.
Because when you have a gender diverse workforce, having a female who's a leader, it's no longer seen as an other. It's seen as representative of the group. And that's one way that we can address that first broken rung, bringing more women into the entry-level management, building these teams that then help our female leaders succeed and accelerate growth.
That makes a lot of sense, and actually seeing people for their capabilities and their experiences rather than what they are, but what they contribute. And I think that makes a lot of sense to bring that diversity out there and build those teams. And actually, if we talk about that a little bit, and we're talking about different regions, but specifically India, I know Jill, I'd love to hear from you in terms of the cultural differences and how do we address that, and what do you feel makes sense in that area?
Yes, a very interesting topic, and particularly for women in nutraceuticals, as we deal with quite a prickly and a sensitive issue around gender diversity and really changing the balance in the countries that we work in. It's critical to understand what matters to each specific audience and really what is going to help bring them along the journey in a very safe and comfortable way, with deep respect for all the different nuances within the countries. I do think, listening to you, Anand, and really hearing your story, the great intent that you have and you've learnt, and how you are evolving your business, which really leans into a broader and a higher purpose. And if we approach this as we are at Women in Nutraceuticals, coming in a purpose-led manner, our narrative then becomes far more sensitive, and I guess that's where we are looking at our lead now in India, who will take it forward in the way that suits your audience. But the cultural sensitivities are actually very crucial in order to effect change and success. Yes.
That makes a lot of sense. And actually, we'll jump over to India for a moment. And Rajat, what are some of the challenges that women face in the workforce in India right now?
I think there are quite a few to name. I mean, I don't think we can cover this entire, it's a broad topic during our discussion today, but I know that when we were looking into this, something that really alarmed me, I knew this was an issue, but I did not know how big of an issue it is. But when we looked at our numbers, it was a research conducted a couple of years ago, which talked about 70% of the women that leave the workforce for childbirth. There are 50% of the workforce that at the age of 30, which I believe is a ripe age to climb that corporate ladder, women are again leaving the industry to get into taking care of their children. And there are a good percentage of women that return, but then again only 16% of those women continue to stay back. And I think that 16% and the original 70%, that's a really big number. So while there are a number of cultural nuances, I think India honestly is at the forefront. We've had female presidents. So we have female president right now. We've in fact one of the first few countries who've had a female prime minister very early after our independence. So while there are challenges, I think the maximum thing that women are looking for is maybe flexibility, the support from their leadership that allows them that flexibility to, because there is going to be a need for them to want to have children, who want to be able to take a break. But how do we make it easy for them to continue doing that, come back to the workforce? I think that's a very critical point, and I think that's a great cause and a purpose for women to even go after in this country.
Absolutely, it makes a lot of sense. And actually, it's interesting about the workforce because and leaving for maternity. In the States now, there are opportunities for paternity leave as well as maternity leave, which is fantastic. However, it's somewhat frowned upon by parts of the population. So even though we're being open to offering paternity leave, it's not necessarily accepted quite yet. And actually, Anand, maybe we can talk a little bit about the differences that you've seen. You have a business. You founded your business, and you travel back and forth between India and the States. And perhaps you can share a little bit about the differences that you see between the two countries.
It's so what I see, the kind of empowerment which I see that lacks in India, the basic empowerment. We have great workers in this country. I go back to my own R&D and I talk to people who are so capable. They don't know how capable they are, and I have to remind them most of the time. And I think that's where the role of mentorship comes in. I don't know how to do it in the right way, and I think that's where I seek more and more support and guidance from members of WIN. And if we can create that part, you have fantastic leaders who are in making, but then they need a push. And you know what? We men mostly we got that push. It's not that we were born leaders. Somebody pushed us. Somebody helped us in our career along the way, and if we can just make it more focused, make it more purposeful, that it's for that purpose only where we need to nurture more leaders, bring them up, empower them, and you'll see tremendous results. And I think because more and more women are going to studies, and they are extremely good scientists, extremely good in administration, pretty good on logistics, which pretty much forte of men out there. And I'm finding women who are just beating everybody out of the whole game because they can handle the stress better. So it's amazing.
Which is interesting.
It's a very interesting thought. It's a very traditionally men-held area, and then you see that somebody who is doing a really phenomenal job out there. So ideas, I think, once we start empowering, once we start mentoring, once we start telling these leaders in making, I always said leaders in making, we have a bunch of leaders in making. We just need to bring them up. That's the challenge which I see.
Well, I think if you see it, you can be it. And so as we have more women who are moving up, we're making those connections. And certainly when we talk about this issue, paternity leave and making that a norm, flexible working and work from home and family leave, these are benefits for everyone. So it's not just good for women, it's good for everyone. And when we talk about finding more gender equity, it's not win-lose. It's not you have power and I want it. It's let's grow the pie. This is a huge industry and so much opportunity. Why would you leave out anyone who could bring a benefit to your business just because they're X or Y? And that's broad diversity. Yep. But if you're missing out on hiring and promoting women, you're missing out on a huge amount of the workforce itself, and you've been able to tap into that, which I really respect how you've approached it.
And also, what else you're looking for this entire business is the diversity of thought. Sometime, and especially we are all in the wellness industry. Wellness industry is so centered on women. It's built around them. They have every role to play in that. And if we don't have that voice on every aspect, from farming to research and development to delivery formats to the way we print and we communicate, if we don't have that voice out there, how are we going to succeed? And at the end of the day, if we are preaching wellness, how is wellness for just 50% of people?
No, absolutely, and that brings up some really good points about the industry, because 80% of the consumers happen to be women. And here we take a look at the diversity numbers and the leadership numbers, we're certainly not there. And if we take a look at product development, women understand and probably have a better sense of what needs to be done for a woman's body and for product development, adding those diversity of thoughts in the product development process as well. So I think from product development all the way up to marketing and understanding what the needs are, this really makes sense to have that type of diversity within the industry. So Anand, you've been a very early supporter. How do we bring more men into the fight to help women rise to the top and help bring more gender diversity to the industry?
I think it's more to do with the way of understanding. There are so many biases which are inbuilt. And so many times all these biases are so subconscious that you need to make an effort. To make an effort, you have to understand it first. Sometimes we think that these biases are very much part of our lives, and you don't understand. There are many things which I learned, during the meetings with interacting with you one-to-one, and listening to everybody out there. What I understood that I have those biases just sitting in my brain, and I thought they were just normal. And to understand that, and I think when we talk men to men on this issue, and it's easier to communicate. Just saying that, hey, by the way, the thing you're doing is not normal. And I think when it comes from between the genders, it just again reinforces the bias again.
Yes.
And the idea of bringing more men into it is to have that men talk. That that bias, can we just talk about it? And it's just going to be a fleeting thing, but it will just bring it up. And then and once we start doing that more and more between a group of men talking to each other about this issue and try to address it. At least once we bring those biases up, that they are biases, once they're known, you'll try to consciously to really suppress it or work towards that. So I think that's where I see a big big opportunity to bring more men and talk to women first, and then talk themselves. That how it's gonna play out.
Exactly.
That's the idea.
No, and that's actually why WIN had been founded by both women and men. We felt that it couldn't be a siloed group. As a siloed group, we really can't be effective in any changes. We have to collaborate with men and women, with the whole industry, to really be effective and to be successful in bringing more women to leadership and helping women advance through their careers. And that bias exists for both men and women. I think that everybody has some sort of bias, and I'm sure that bias in terms of a leadership side also has to be checked and taken a look at, and how do we, as everyone in leadership, kind of view people for who they are rather than what they bring to the table rather than what they are. So, and I know, Jill, you were talking a little bit about sustainability before our conversation. Just wanted to hear your thoughts on that area and how this would be impactful in this goal to bring more women to leadership.
Yes, absolutely. I think since COVID, there's been a shift in perception and demand by audiences who are consumers as well as our workers, who are really demanding a more fairer and a better place to live, a healthier planet, but also healthier for people, more conciliatory, more diverse, and so forth. And I think that we should keep in view that this is obviously an industry that is driven ultimately by demand by consumers who themselves are workers as well. And if we can keep that in view and play into that and understand what matters to them, we are able to change that agenda. Again, Anand, hearing the way you talk and how you're thinking within your business is really gratifying and great for Women in Nutraceuticals to see this agenda moving forward. And I think that the UN Sustainability Goals, of which there are 17 top goals, looking at how we look at diversity is absolutely key. And that's a benchmark, a North Star, by which consumers as well are making choices around products that they choose, and particularly in the wellness space.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's critical.
We were talking about the challenges in India, and I'll bring it back to India for a moment. What is it, Rajat, that you see as the best approach to help support the Indian market and the Indian nutraceutical, the women in the Indian nutraceutical market?
I think it'll have to be a multi-pronged approach. One is looking at a very organic way of doing this. So when you look at the numbers, Heather shared earlier about just the raw facts of, diversity brings you better results, better profits. I think that's a great way of bringing that awareness into the industry that why diversity is required, and there are hard data facts to support that. So I think that's a very organic way of doing that, and definitely when the representation in India is going to help towards that. And I think the other way to look at it is also engaging with all our existing industry leaders. So looking at the natural product industry in India, I think whether you're looking at your finished formulation guys, from your ingredient manufacturers to clinical research organizations, government organizations, scientists, is there a way to bring that right leadership into WIN, have them participate and have them make them part of the conversation and let them be the change makers? And on the other side, I think there are such fantastic programs that are being, there's in fact a lot of masters in nutraceuticals also as a program available in India now. So when you look at the workforce that's entering in now, how can we start supporting them? How can we start bringing them into the conversation? How can we make sure that they're mentored by the right people, both men and women, so that they can excel and they can reach the top, they don't drop out of the workforce, and they continue to get that transformative power, which anywhere industry holds for healthcare, but they can be at the lead and the helm of that discussion.
Perfect. No, that sounds great, and certainly you'll be reaching out to the market and to the industry to really bring that support in. I know Anand, you'll be supporting Rajat fully here and working together. Any final comments from anybody about the topic?
I'm just absolutely delighted to be here, and the fact that India is now our first global liaison, it's our first geo-focus. There's such opportunity, and I'm absolutely delighted to work with you, Rajat. I think you're going to be a powerful shining light in this area, but also for WIN overall, to give us a great path forward as we look into other geos. And we heard a lot about that at the C-Suite Summit, the opportunities in nutraceuticals. Imagine pairing the opportunities around health and consumers and sustainability with bringing gender equity into your workforce. It's going to have transformative power.
Super excited and stoked to be able to do that, and I'm honestly, from the time WIN started, I was very excited about it. This has been a cause very close to my heart, and to be able to now be part of that discussion, to be part of that, the change-making team, I think is an immense responsibility and a privilege. So really looking forward to executing that with the group.
No, we're very excited to have you on board, and I have to say again, WIN is a global organization. We're trying to be very seamless and have our clear goals for the future, but at the same time making sure we understand those cultural nuances and the regional differences and those particularly specific areas that need a special focus.
So learn more at womeninnutraceuticals.org, info@womeninnutraceuticals.org. Jill, am I missing anything? Join our LinkedIn group.
Absolutely.
Become a member.
Absolutely.
Become a sponsor.
Yes.
It's all about collaboration.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to add one more thing. I want to add thanks to Nutrify C-Suite. They have given us a good stage to put this thought across this industry, and we wish to collaborate more and more with them in future years to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.